In this video, we're building this amazing animated interactive website completely from scratch. And for all this, we're going to be using Framer, which is a no-code website builder that allows people who don't know anything about coding, like me or maybe like you, to create their own websites, their amazing websites, without touching any code. So let me help you get started with Framer by walking you through the process of creating your very first website. My name is Nandi. This is Framer University, and let's get started. So before I start the video, I just want to make sure that this is super easy to follow along with, so I'll break it up into a few sections. In the first section, we're going to build the hero section of the website. Then in the second section, we're going to build the features section. We're going to then move on to building the navigation and the footer section of the website. Yeah, then we're going to go into a really exciting part where we're going to be adding a bunch of cool animations to the hero section. And then it will be time to optimize the website for smaller breakpoints like tablet or mobile. For that, we're going to turn the navigation into a component and create a little hamburger menu interaction so we can open it down. And then, we're just going to optimize the rest of the sections on the website, and we're going to finish off the video by publishing our website with a single click. So without any further ado, let's get started. So as you can see, we're going to be building this amazing website. As you see, it has an amazing appear effect, and then when I hover around with my cursor and I move it, these images are moving in like a parallax way. And yeah, we have this simple feature section and then a footer and then a navigation, which is, by the way, responsive. The whole site is responsive, of course. But yeah, we're going to build this really quickly. It's going to be easy. I'm going to walk you through this whole process. So let's get started. This is what you're going to see when you create your Framer project. By the way, for this completed project, I'm going to leave a remix link in the description. So if you get stuck with something, you can just grab that and just dig into the file to, take a little bit deeper looks into how it's built. So the first thing that you'll have to do when you jump into a completely blank Framer project is that you have to set the desktop breakpoint into a stack. So you can do that with this layout button on the right panel. Now it's all good. The direction will be vertical, the distribute will be start, and the gap will be 0. So now the desktop breakpoint is set up correctly, and we can start adding little frames within by pressing down F on our keyboard and drawing frames. So now that we created this first frame, we can rename it to main, because this will contain the sections on our website and it will be the main container. So this is main. I'll also go to the right panel, accessibility tag and main, so the browsers will also know that this is the main section on the website. We're going to remove the fill color, and we're going to also turn this into layout so we can place elements within with relative positioning. Normally, if this is not a layout, we can only place elements in with absolute positioning, which means that they can be positioned freely, but they cannot be switched to relative, which is really important for us when we are creating responsive sites. So just make sure that most of your little frames are set to stacks with this little layout button right here. So this is correct here. Now we can set the width to fill, so it will always fill up the available width on the website. And then we're going to set the height to, I don't know, something like 2000 for now. And then we're going to set the desktop to fit height, so it automatically adapts to the content within. So now that we have the main 2000 pixels within, it will adapt to that. So the main stack will have to have a little bit different layout settings, because now it is placing elements within itself like this, horizontally and in the center of itself. Instead of this, we want to set it up in a way that we would place, sections within. We want to place sections within, so we have to set it up according to this. So I'm just going to go to the right panel, click direction vertical, and then the distribute will be start, and the gap will be 0. And now you can see that these are little sections on our website. So this first frame will be called hero. This will be the hero section. I'm going to turn it into layout and remove its fill color, and also make sure that the width is set to fill. I'm going to delete these 2 additional frames, and I'll just duplicate this hero and make sure that I name it maybe features, because this will be the feature section below. And then the main can also be switched to fit content, because now we have some content within, which are these sections. And so as you remember, we set the accessibility tag for the main to main, And so now these sections need to be set to sections. So accessibility on the right tag, it is right here. And now it is all good. So I can start just placing elements within our hero section. So the first element that I'm going to place in is going to be this text layer here. So let's do that. I'm going to just probably copy this from here so I don't have to type it in. So I'm going to press T on my keyboard, just click here within the hero and Command and V. Basically that's it. We have our text layer here. I'm going to set the alignment on the right panel to center, and I'm going to make sure that it's a little bit bigger, maybe 100 pixels. So as you can see, we are mixing two fonts right here. So this one right here on the top is Mondwest, and these right here are called Libre. So I'm going to just switch those. So this is going to be Mondwest. This is, by the way, a custom font. You have to buy it. This is just a trial version, and I uploaded it to this Framer project. And okay, so this is pretty good. And now I'm going to also switch this one to Mondwest. And then this will be the Libre one, which is, by the way, a free Google font. This is the one that we need. So now that we set these, you can see that the pixelated one looks a little bit smaller compared to this other font. So we'll have to tweak their sizes to make sure that they look equal. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. It's going to be 84 pixels. And then, yeah, basically that's it. We're going to also make sure that the without is italic. And then to match the boldness of this font right here, we're going to add a little bit of stroke to this one. So I'm going to select it, stroke. It's just going to be 1 pixel. We could make it a little bit wider, but 1 pixel is perfectly enough for us. And I'm going to also make this one a little bit bolder by adding that stroke to it. And now it's very good. Let's also switch the line height to a little bit smaller value, so these lines are a little bit closer to each other. And I think that's it. That's all I have to set right here on this H1. I can also go here to the accessibility panel on the right and just set H1 right here, just so that, you know, browsers can also know that this is the H1 on our website. Okay, so now let's get this other text layer. I'm gonna similarly just press T on my keyboard and just paste it in here. And I think we pasted in some more things. I think this is all we need. Design and publish websites straight from the canvas. It's going to be a different font. It's going to be Manrope. So let me just set it to Manrope. And then it is going to be semi-bold, and the color will be black. And it will be slightly bigger. It is going to have 20 pixels. The letter spacing will be set back to 0, and the line height will be 1.5. So I'm going to have a little bit more space between these two. I'm going to set it to 30 pixels, the gap between the H1 and this other text layer. And then I'm going to add some buttons that we can see right here. And you can see that they also have this magnetic effect, which we're going to create really soon. So first, just again, a text layer, T on our keyboard, click here, start building. This will be again Manrope, however it will be bold, and it will be 16 pixel size. And yeah, I think that's it. We can now wrap it in a frame. So we can either right click and add stack, or just press the shortcut, which is Option, Command and Enter. So this is what I'm going to do because it's much faster. So now here I'm going to just make sure that this is set to fit content of it. So it fits the content within, which is the text layer. And I'm going to rename this stack to content. So this will contain the content of our button, which is this text layer. And then I'm going to make sure that it is a little bit larger, maybe 44 pixels in height. And then I'm going to also add padding on the left and the right. It's going to have 16 pixels on both sides. I'm going to also add the fill color, which will be black, so that we can then switch the text layer to white. And then we're going to also add a little corner radius, which is going to be 12. So the corners are now nicely rounded. Basically that's it. Now you can see that we have a button on our website. However, if we click on this, the text is selectable, which is not really a great experience when we have interactive elements on our website. So we'll have to make sure that it's not selectable. We can go to the right panel, styles, and add user select set to none to this text layer. And now you can see that it is not selectable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this content frame into another frame by pressing Option, Command and Enter. I'm going to set it to fit width and fit height by pressing Shift and A. And then I'm going to also set its overflow to visible. So when we add this magnetic effect to the button and it overflows this button frame, it will not be cutting off. So now I can rename the stack to button, and I can finally turn this into a component by right clicking on this and then hitting create component. By the way, the shortcut is Option, Command and K. Now we are here on the component canvas where we can define a bunch of different variants for this button. This will be the primary, and we can also create a secondary. So the secondary should have the secondary title. Let me just spell it correctly, secondary, okay. And we're gonna set it to a gray color. So I'm gonna add a different fill color here, which is gonna be a gray. Let me just see what was the exact color code that I used. It was this one. And the text layer, of course, will be set to black, so it is visible. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have to adjust on the secondary. And so now we have this button component. We can duplicate it. We can then somehow make sure that these two buttons are right next to each other instead of right below each other. We can wrap them in a stack by selecting them, hitting Option, Command and Enter on our keyboard. And now we can set the direction here to vertical. Between them we'll have 16 pixels, and we will switch this other one to secondary. But now the issue is that we cannot really switch the text on these buttons, because if we go within the component and change it here, it will change on both components. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to come here within the component canvas, select the text layer on the primary variant, go to the right panel to the content, click this little label here and create a plain text variable which will be called label. So now we created a component variable that we can adjust in the right panel on the different instances of the component. So for example, on this one it says start building, but here I can switch it to something else, maybe learn more. So now this other button says something else. And by the way, I can similarly create a link variable here inside of the component by going to the top right, clicking link, and then creating a variable for that one as well. So now if you preview this button, you can see that it looks all good, but it doesn't really have the magnetic effect. So how do we add that? Well, for that we have to use the magnetic hover component that we can find here on the assets panel, and we can just drag and drop it here onto the canvas. As you can see, this is an invisible component, so we just have to place it within the button. So I'm going to press Command X to cut it, and then I'm going to paste it within this content frame within our button. So now you can see that it takes up a little space here. We can just switch it to absolute positioning. So now it's really just going to be an invisible component that just adds this effect to our button. So if I select the magnetic hover component, I have these properties on the right panel that I can adjust to create a little bit different effect, because now it looks something like this. But if I want to decrease the intensity of this effect, I can do that really easily. I'll set the distance to 5, the hover area to 8, and then I'm going to make sure that the children, so the text there, is getting affected a little bit differently. I'm going to set the distance here to 2, and then the smoothing will be 70, so it's going to be a little bit more of a smoother effect. And now if we take a look at here, you can see that it is nicely getting magnetic. However, it's getting cutting off because of the wrapping frame around these buttons. We can switch it to visible overflow, so now they are going to be nicely visible when they overflow. And yeah, we have a cool magnetic hover effect. We just have to make sure that these buttons have the pointer cursor when we hover over them. So I'm going to add that here within the component. And yeah, now it's pretty good. By the way, you can get this magnetic hover component from the Framer University website. So if you go to Framer University and you go to the resources section, you can search for magnetic hover and you can just copy the component from here. Now what I want to make sure is that we have a little bit more distance here. But if I adjust this gap, it is getting adjusted here and also here. So how do I make sure that I'm only adjusting the gap right here? Well, basically I can just wrap these two text layers in their own frames. So Option, Command and Enter after selecting them. I'm going to set their gap to 30, and this right here will be set to 46. So I can also define it right here. And now you can see that we have a little bit more space here, but honestly it looks kind of equal when we look at it like here. So yeah, pretty good. Now we can move on to the next part, which is going to probably be these images that are moving in accordance with my cursor. So to create that, we're going to just create an image component and we're going to duplicate it a bunch of times around this hero section. But before I do anything else, I just want to make sure that this hero section is taking up 100% of my given viewport at all times, because now what happens is that this hero section is set to a fixed height value, which is, always fixed. If I have a different viewport height, it's not really adapting. So I'll have to set it to VH right here and 100. So it will basically mean that it will always take up 100% of my given viewport, and this content here is nicely staying centered. I'm going to just create a large frame right here. This will be the wrapper for these images. So I'm going to remove the fill color of this, and then it's going to be 1350 for the width, and then the height will be 1000. And this is going to be an exception. This is not going to be turned into a stack, because we want to be able to move these images around freely without having to mess around with stacks and relative positioning and layout settings. So within this frame, by the way, I'm going to just call this images wrapper. We're just going to create a frame here, which is going to be something like 200 width and 240 for the height. And then this is going to have no fill color. And within this, I'm going to create another frame which will have the actual image. I need to create this other image layer within this frame, because then I can add a really cool hover state where it scales down or hover. So this frame right here will have probably 8 pixel corner radius, and it will be called image. And then image component will be its parent. We're going to turn it into a component really soon. And let's upload our first image here. So I'm going to just click to fill color, switch this image, and then I'm just going to drag and drop one of my images here. And yeah, I think that's it. That's all we need. Maybe we can also add the parallax hover here just to show you how it works. So it is going to be a separate component again that you can grab from the Frame.University website. As I showcased it in the other example, you can just search it up on the Frame.University website, but it is right here for me on the assets panel. So I'm just going to grab and drop it onto the canvas. This is also an invisible component that we have to place within the image component. So it is basically on top of this image. And yeah, it is again just an invisible component that adds the effect to our element that we are basically pasting it within. It is going to be set up right here on the right panel. We can change the speed of this effect, so how fast it is going to be moving. It's going to be moving toward my cursor or away from my cursor, so it's going to be moving away. So when I move my cursor to the left, the images will move to the right, and the smoothing will be set to 70 again for a little bit more of a smoother effect. And now let's take a look at this. You can see it looks pretty good. When I hover, it's just moving to all sorts of different directions. And yeah, basically that's it. Now we can just make sure that this is turned into a component. Why are we turning it into a component? Well, because if we just duplicate these a bunch of times, and then when we have eventually tens of these images, and we change our mind and we say, oh, we want to have a little bit bigger corner radius on these images, well, then we will have to go and select each of these images within each of the components, or not components, just simple frames, and switch them to larger or smaller corner radius one by one. However, if we create one main component, then we're going to be able to just add those changes to that component, and it will update on all component instances. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to turn this image component to a component, right-clicking and clicking create component, and then this is it. Here we have it. And by the way, components are also useful for creating hover states. So we can just click here, hover, and then I can scale this image down to maybe scale 0.95. And then I can also switch the opacity to 0.8. So let's take a look at this right now. It looks pretty good, but maybe I want to make this transition a little bit slower. So I can select the default primary variant here on top. And on the right panel, I can change the transition to a little bit slower one. And also I'm going to remove this bounce. So now this is what we have. Another optimization that we can make is making sure that this image is not draggable by clicking the image layer, going to the right panel to styles, and adding the draggable and setting it to no. Now it's no longer gonna be draggable. So how do we make sure again that we can set different images for these different component instances? You already know it, we have to create component variables. So here on the primary variant, I'm going to go to the right, and the fill color will be switched to a component variable, which is going to be called image. And what else do we have to turn into a component variable? Well, the speed of the parallax floating, because these elements right here, as you can see on the original, you can see that they are moving with a little bit different speeds. So these ones on the top are moving with faster speed compared to the ones that are further away from us. That's how we create this little parallax effect. So we will have to just select the parallax floating component and turn the speed into a variable, or just add a speed variable to the speed property. So now we're going to be able to set it from the right properties panel on each of these instances individually. So now all I have to do is I have to arrange these within the images wrapper frame, and I have to upload different images for them, change their speed. I'm going to probably speed up this part of the video. Oh, and by the way, I'll set the feature section to overflow visible. So these are visible when they are overflowing the feature section, so I can easily assemble this whole scene right here. For example, here when I want to make sure that this is on top of this other image, I can just set it to a higher z-index on the right panel. So styles, z-index, and I just switch it to 1. So you can see that now it's over this other, smaller image layer, which is, further away from us. So now you can see that I have a rough arrangement of these image components. And one extra thing that we have to, pay attention to is that none of the pins are activated on these image components, because now if we start resizing their parent, they will start, acting a little bit weirdly because of those pins. So I'll just select all of the image components and click here to the middle twice to have this little blue dot here. And now you will see that their behavior will be much different, much better. So yeah, now I'll just make sure to upload the new images. So now you can see I have all of the images. So all I have to do now is to change their speed. So basically these little small ones will have the slowest speed. So I'm going to set them to maybe 20. And then this one is a little bit bigger, I think. So it's going to be 30, these two here. And then these are going to be, these two maybe 50. And I think this is going to be maybe a little bit bigger. And then this is going to be the fastest, which is going to be actually 70 for the speed. So now I can just take a look at this right here. And yeah, it looks really nice. So I can now place it within the hero section. I was adding it right here to the features because it's just easy to set it up right here and then add it to the hero section, because we don't have any additional elements here that could make our life a little bit harder. So I'm just going to press Command and X to cut it, and then press Command and V within the hero. And now as you can see, it's placed right here. We just have to make sure that it's set to absolute positioning. I'm going to center it to Option H and the V. And then I'm going to again deactivate all of the pins so it's not adapting to screen size changes. And yeah, I think that's it. Maybe I can fine tune the positions of these elements right here just slightly. So I'll move them a little bit to the top. This is going to be moved to the top. These are actually moved to the bottom a little bit. And I think this is gonna be, oopsie, this is gonna be it. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure to, first of all, give it a look. So, okay, it looks really nice. You might say that, great, I added this cool effect to my website. But in reality, you actually made your website a little bit not accessible, because now you cannot really click these buttons. You can see that my cursor is not changing to the pointer and I cannot select these text layers. And it's because this images wrapper is now above the content that is right here, the center content. So the way we're going to fix this is by making sure that the images wrapper has this style called pointer events. If we set pointer events to none on an element, it will basically mean that we cannot no longer interact with it. So we can interact with the layers that are below it. which are the buttons and these text. The buttons are a little bit more important than selecting the text. But now we have another issue. We cannot hover over these elements because now the pointer reference is none on them. So yeah, I just cannot hover or even click if I want to add, links to these images. So the way I'm going to solve that issue is by setting only the images within the images wrapper to pointer events auto. So we're going to have pointer events none on the images wrapper, the whole frame, but we're going to then set back the pointer events to auto on these image layers so we can interact with them and only with them. So now we can see that I can select the text, click the buttons, and also hover over these individual components right here. One extra thing that we have to consider is what if we have a smaller viewport and then we scroll down. You can see that these images start cutting off right here on the bottom. So to avoid that, we can set the hero section to overflow visible. So now you can see that the overflowing parts are nicely visible, and even on smaller devices, it will not cut off. So now we can move into creating the next section, which is going to be the features section. So I'm gonna start by creating just a container frame for this content that we're gonna put within. So I'm just gonna press F, draw a frame, call it content, turn it into a layout or a stack, and remove its fill color. I'm gonna set it to width fill. The height will be 600, and I'm gonna also make sure to set a little max width on it just to make sure that it cannot grow bigger than a certain size. It's gonna be 600 pixels. So you can see that it is set to width fill. It's trying to fill up the space, but it's not growing bigger than 600 pixels. Then we can set the features section to height fit content, and then we can add a little top, bottom, and left and right padding as well. Just make sure that the top padding is only 100 and not 1000. So now this is a pretty good setup. And all we have to do now is to create this little card and add 2 columns within. One will have a bunch of text layers and the other one will have a couple of screenshots that we'll make inside the Framer. So first column here, and then I'm gonna just duplicate it just to make sure that, okay, these are placed right next to each other. But I'm gonna then delete it and then just call it column 1 or C1. And then I'm gonna set the fill color to transparent, so I'm gonna remove it. Then the width will be fill, the height will be fill as well. And then I'm going to add a layout to it. And the direction will be vertical because these text layers will be below each other, of course. And yeah, now I can just press T on my keyboard and start writing here. So the first text will be styling features. So let me just paste it within here. Pretty nice. And let me just make sure to set up the styling correctly. It is going to be 24 pixels. The weight will be bold. And then we're going to also set the width to fill, so it fills up the available space. This is really important because if we set something for width fixed, it's not a good idea. In terms of, for example, text layers, if the width is not filled, then it's not going to be breaking into new lines when we don't have enough space on the device. So this is good. I'm going to just duplicate it with Command and D. And I'm going to grab this other text layer. I'm going to just paste it within here. And then this is probably going to be 16 pixels. I'm going to switch it to man rope here. The weight will be probably medium. Then the line height will be 1.5. I'm going to also add balance right here. So it will make sure to always have balanced line breaks. And then I'll also add a max width to this one, so it's not displayed in one line, but it is basically breaking into multiple lines. On the original we have 3 lines, so I'm going to set it to maybe 260. So now it is right here in the center. It's because this first column is set to center alignment. We can switch it to left, and now it's pretty nice. And yeah, we can now create a button right here, which is something like this. For that, we can just jump within our button component that we created not so long ago. However, I cannot really click it because this image's wrapper frame is on top of it and I just cannot click below that. So I'll just have to lock this layer by right-clicking and clicking lock. And then now you can see that I can select layers below that. So I'll just double-click into this and then create a new variant, which is going to be tertiary. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove first of all, the magnetic hover. I'm going to just disable it. And then I'm going to switch the contents fill color to transparent, so I'm going to remove it. And then probably we have to remove the padding on the left and the right. I think that's it. Now we have the tertiary button style. We can just copy, paste it in here, and then switch the variant to tertiary. And then basically that's it. We can write learn more, and then we can add the little right arrow in there, and yeah, now it's perfect. I think one thing I remember now is that we also have to have a little hover state, so let's create that. We could just go within the component again, and then I'm going to switch to light mode so we can better see what we're doing. I'm going to click hover, and here on the text layer we're just going to add a decoration which is going to be underline. So basically that's it. That's all we have to do here. So now if I preview this, you're going to see that on hover we have a nice underline. So now we can just duplicate this C1. So now we have another column. Between these, we probably have to have 44 pixels. And then I'm going to remove these elements here. I'm going to rename it to C2. And then let's create a few screenshots that we'll be using inside of this column 2. So maybe we can create a screenshot of the styles panel. So now I have all of these screenshots. I can just rename them to 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to just grab them, put them here within the C2. And I'm going to probably wrap them in another like wrapper frame, because if I just use these images and make them a little bit rounded, I feel like we don't have enough empty space around them. And that's why I'm going to just wrap them inside of another stack. So Option Command and Enter. Then I'm going to rename this stack to wrapper. And then the padding will be set to 8, and I'll set a fill color for that, which is exactly the color that we have on the screenshot. The corner radius will be 20, and yeah, probably that's it. I'm going to set the image within to fill, so it fills up the available space, and then the wrapper itself will also be fill. So now I can just duplicate this wrapper and just replace the images right here. So I'm going to just copy this fill, place it within here. And then here I'm going to just set a little bit different padding. It's going to be 11 because we need a little bit more space on this one. And then I'm going to duplicate this wrapper again and replace the image with this other one. So now we have all of the images within wrappers. So all we have to do is to like start animating them like up and down. And it's really easy to do with Framer's effects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first position them to their initial position, which is going to be a little bit different one. Now this C2 is set to distribute center, which basically means that they are trying to always stay in the center, but we need start instead, so they start at the top. We also need to have a little bit more space from the top, maybe 44 pixels. Yeah, that's it. Now we can just make sure that they are animated, so I'm going to select all of these wrappers. I'm going to go to Effects on the right panel, I'm going to select Loop, and then we're going to use the mirror version of the loop effect, because this will make sure that it will go back and forth between these two values. The rotation will be 0, and the transition will be spring, 15 seconds and 0 bounce, and then the actual effect that we want is just an offset, so we're going to offset them like this. Something like this looks really nice. So if you take a look at this, this is what we have. It just starts animating up and down. But now that I'm like looking at this, I realized that this needs to be in a little card container. So we have to wrap these two columns in another stack. So Option Command and Enter. I'm going to make sure that this stack is set to fill height. And then I'll have 44 padding around, 44 gap between these two columns. I think that's it. We just have to set a fill color. This will probably be this color that we have on the secondary button, maybe with a little decreased opacity. And then the corner radius will be 24. And that's it. Now let's take a look at this. Yeah, as you can see, something I don't like about this is that they are not touching the bottom of the card. So to solve that, we can just remove the bottom and top padding from the card. So now you can see that they are nicely touching the bottom right here. On the top, of course, they are not, because we added that padding to the C2. So now this is what we have. Not actually perfect, because these images within are actually a little bit too big for their wrapper. So let's take a look at what happened here. Yeah, it seems like that these images are not set to with fill. I actually forgot to do it. I only did it on the first image, but now it is going to be perfect. So this is how easy it is to create a feature section in Framer. However, I see that this space is too big right here. So I'll probably have to adjust the offset value on these effects. I'm going to select all the wrappers and just decrease it like this. So now it's going to be perfect. We finished up the feature section, so we can move on to creating the next part of the website, which is probably going to be a little navigation. You can see that on the original, we have this top navigation with a little like logo, button, menu items. And in fact, this is really nice and responsive. On smaller breakpoints, we see this hamburger menu. So we'll create this as well a little bit later. But now let's just make the base of the navigation. So for that, we're gonna just, I don't know, I wanna make an empty section right here, just duplicating the features so that I can create the navigation here. So I'm gonna just draw a frame. This would be called navigation. And then I'm gonna start by adding accessibility tag nav to the navigation, because it's pretty easy to understand why it's navigation, so it should have nav. Navigation should be fill color right with a little decreased opacity of maybe 90%. And then to make sure that the background is a little bit blurred, you can see that when I start scrolling down the site and these text layers are moving below the navigation, they are, you know, a little bit blurred, and we can kind of see through the navigation. I don't know if you can see that, it's really subtle. But yeah, that background blur effect is, by the way, added on the styles panel by clicking filters and BG blur. This value will be 10 right here. So the height of the navigation will be 70 pixels, so I can define it here on the right panel by setting the height to 70. Then I will make sure that it is a layout by pressing this button here, so now we'll be able to set really nice relative position elements within. So I'll just create a container here within, which is going to be called content, and then we'll set it to width fill, and then the height will be fill. And then I'm going to remove the fill color and turn it into a stack as well. And now I can just start placing in some elements. So we're going to have a little frame for the logo. It's going to be 36 pixels. The corner radius will be 8, and it's going to be fully black. I already have my logo here, so I'm just going to grab it and place it within this frame here. I'm going to make sure that the logo is a little bit smaller, 16 pixels. Center it within the frame. Let's call this content. This one is going to be an SVG. I'm going to wrap the SVG in the frame, by the way, just to make sure that we can position it a little bit more easily. SVG layers in Framer sometimes act a little bit weirdly, so that's why I like wrapping them in frames. And so now we have this content. I can also wrap this in another stack. So Option Command and Enter, and then set it to fit content with Shift A. And now just call this logo and turn it into a component with Option Command and K. And now here, I'll just make sure that it has a link on the top right. So I'll link it to Framer.University probably. And what else? I think I want to make it magnetic as well. So I'll just grab the same magnetic effect that I used on these buttons. So I'll just come here to the button component and copy the effect from here, because then we can have the same, settings that we had. So I'll probably place it within the content here, and let's see if it works. Yes, it works nicely, but you can see that it's cutting off. So we can set the parent to visible overflow. And yeah, now it looks pretty good. I like it. That's it. For the logo, we can go back. What else do we have? We probably have menu items and a button, as you can see right here. So for the button, you might say, oh, it's pretty easy. You can just copy and paste in this button component. But you're gonna see that this is a little bit too big for us. So we wanna have a little bit smaller button, but we can just create a new variant for that. So we can just create a new secondary. We're gonna call this secondary SM. So secondary small. So here the text will be 14 pixels, and then the padding will be also decreased to 14, and the height will be 36. And basically that's it. That's all we will adjust on the secondary SM, and I'll switch it to that variant. So now you can see that these are matching in height, which is pretty nice. So now the last elements that we have to add is these menu items. So these will be just simple text layers. I'm gonna press T on my keyboard, click here and write resources. And then I'll make sure that it is Manrope. The weight will be semi-bold. And yeah, that's all I have to adjust here. I'm gonna wrap it in a stack, Option Command Enter, set it to fit content with Shift A, and then the height will be 36, just like the other elements here. And that's it. This will be a menu item, so let's rename it to menu item here. And yeah, I can just turn it into a component as well. So Option Command K, and let's switch to light mode. This will be the default state, and then here we can just have a hover state, which will have an underline. So decoration and underline. And then of course I want to be able to switch the text layer here, so I'll have to make it a label variable. And also I might want to add different links to this, so let's create a link variable as well. So now I could just duplicate this menu item 2 times, so we now have 3 in total. And we're gonna have lessons, resources, and support. So lessons, and then resources and support. And of course we could add links here, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'll just make sure to select these menu items, wrap them in a stack, set them to width fill, and then I'm going to increase the gap between them probably to 40 pixels. So now if we adjust the positioning here, so this logo is on the left, this button is on the right, and then this stack is in the middle, we can see that it looks pretty okay. But if we take a little bit more time to analyze this, you can see that this here is not centered. On the right, we have a little bit more space compared to the other side. So how do we fix this? Well, we just basically have to make sure that the logo and the button is wrapped in a frame that is the same width. So logo, I'm going to press Option Command Enter, set the distribute to start, so it's on the left. Then I'm going to rename it to logo wrapper. I'm going to set the width to fixed, and then 150 pixels. And I'm going to basically do the same thing on the button. Option Command and Enter, set the distribute to end, so the button is on the right side, and then the width will be the same as on the left side. And now you'll see that these menu items are nicely centered. Pretty cool. So now what is the next thing that we're gonna do? I think we're just gonna have to make sure that the navigation is set to width fill, and then the content here has a little bit of max width. As you can see, it's not growing bigger than a certain size. So max width is set to 900 on the content frame. And then we can now actually place it on the top of the website. So I'm going to press Command and X to cut it, and then put it onto the top of the site. So I'm going to select desktop, press Command and V, and then just grab it, put it right here above the main. It's really important that it's not part of the main stack on our website. It's outside of that. And then the position is going to be fixed. So it's fixed on our website. You can see as I scroll down, it's just stay fixed. And then the right pin, the left pin, and the top pin will be both activated with 0 pixel distances. This will make sure that it's adapting to different screen changes. And then to make sure that it's above actually, the elements on the website, we'll have to increase this index to 10 on the navigation. So now it's perfect. One little issue that we have is that you can see we don't have spaces on the left and the right of the navigation. So we can add that by selecting the nav and adding right and left padding 20 and 20. And basically that's it. Now we're gonna have some space on the left and the right. Yeah, very cool. Now we have the navigation. We can move on to creating the footer section right now. So the footer is going to be really, really simple. It's just gonna be a simple frame. So I'm gonna press F on my keyboard, draw one, and then this is going to be called footer. What is the first thing that I do? I basically add an accessibility tag of footer to this one, and then I remove the fill color, and turn it into a stack. And that's it. The structure is going to be probably really similar to the navigation. So we're going to have a content frame within. They set to width fill, below bit contained max width of 900 pixels. And yeah, the footer will be set to width fill. So it fills up the available space. This will be renamed to content. I'll remove the fill color. Then the height will be fill. Or maybe we're going to set it to fit when we have some content within. Now I can place this logo within here, within the content frame. It seems like that the content frame is not a stack, so I'm going to just turn it into one on the right panel. And then I'm going to wrap the logo into a stack with Option Command and Enter. I'm going to set it to fit content. And then we're going to create a text layer here. I'm just going to press Command and X and place it within the stack that we just created. So this will have the copyright text. So I'm just going to copy it from here and paste it in on this text layer. So it is going to be a little bit smaller. No, it's actually great. It's 14 pixels height. And then I'm going to just change the color to a little bit more of a gray one. And then what else? Maybe switch it to medium. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And then the space here can be adjusted as well to 20. So now this is the first element of the footer. We can switch the height to fit content. The last thing that we have to add here is these little social media buttons. So these will be actually variants of the button component. So we can just grab this, place it within here, double click into that and create some new variants. So I'm gonna create a new variant from the secondary because we will need the background color of that one. We're gonna call this social. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure to disable the visibility of the text layer. And then I'm going to grab the SVG component from the Frame University website that I already have in this project and just put it here within the content. You can get it again from the Frame University. Just search for SVG. It's going to be right here. So here I'm going to just make it a little bit smaller, 16 pixels width and 16 pixels height. And then the color will be black. And then the content frame will be set to 36 pixels for the height and 36 pixels for the width as well. And now it looks really nice. Maybe we have to adjust the radius here to 8. As you can see on the right panel of this SVG component, we have an SVG code property where we can paste in the SVG code of our icons. So I can just create a variable for this, so I'll be able to adjust it on different component instances. And yeah, I think that's it. Now I can go back here and turn the variant of this one to social. And now all I have to do is to grab the YouTube SVG code. So I'm going to paste it in right here. And then I'm going to duplicate it and we're going to have Twitter here. So I'm going to paste in Twitter. And that's it. Now we have both of these social buttons. We can wrap them in a stack and set their gap to a little bit bigger one, maybe 20 pixels. And then the content frame could have space between for the distribute. So the first element is on the left and the second element is on the right side of this content frame. And basically that's it. Now we can just make sure that this footer is copied and pasted to the desktop level. So you can see that it's not nested within the main stack. The footer is below the main and the navigation is on top of the main. And yeah, I think that's it. I'm going to set the height of the footer to fit content, maybe add padding on top and on the bottom. And I'm probably going to have padding on the left and the right as well. So let's just remove this additional features section from here. And now we can go on to the exciting part where we're going to animate this website. So you can see that when I load it, so let's reload it, you can see that we have a bunch of like fancy appear effects. We will add those one by one. So first of all, I'm going to select the H1 right here, go to the right panel and click effects, then text. So here I can customize how this text effect will look. Basically the default setting is this. It looks already pretty cool, but I'm going to customize it a little bit. So I'm going to switch the preset to, I'm going to actually leave the preset on blur, but the per character will be switched to per word. So now the individual letters will not be animated, but only like the individual words. And then the enter effect will be slightly different. So we are setting where the text layers are coming in from. So the blur will be 4, and then the offset along the Y is not going to be adjusted, but the offset along the X will be 5. And then the transition will be slightly different. It's going to be 1 second, and then the delay will be 0.05. And now we can see that we have this effect on the heading 1, which looks pretty nice. Now basically we can paste this effect on the subtitle, so I can just right click here, copy and paste it on the subtitle. The only thing that we have to adjust, because I want to make sure that this one right here comes in a little bit later, so we are staggering these animations, is that we adjust the delay here, so maybe 0.5, and you can now see that it looks really nice. First we see the title animating and then the subtitle. We can continue this staggered effect and add appear effects to the buttons. So I'm going to select both of them, go to effects, appear. So we're defining how they are appearing. The enter effect will be opacity 0. We're going to have the same offset along the X that we had on the text, which was 5. And then the spring transition will be slightly different. It's going to be 0.6 with a 0 bounce. And then the delay will be defined right here as 0.6 because we had 0.5 right here on the subtitle. So we're going to have 0.6 on the first button right here on the left, and the second one will have a little bit more delay, 0.7. So now this is what we have: title, subtitle, and then the buttons coming in really nicely. So now we just have to make sure that the images are also animating in a staggered way. If you take a look at the original, you can see that they are coming in clockwise. So it starts from the top and it goes like in a circle to the right. So we're going to do that. I'm going to select all of the images within the wrapper and set the effect of appear on them. The enter effect will be opacity 0. The scale will be 0.9. Then the transition will be again set to 0.6 for the time. And then the bounce will be 0. And then the first one will start at 0.8. And then we're going to add a little bit more delay to each of the image frames. So this here on top, we actually cannot select it because it's locked. Let me unlock it. So we have an image here. Next to that, we have another one. So this is going to be 0.8. This one will animate in after that. So it's going to be 0.825. Then this one will be 0.850. And then we're just going to add 25 to each one. So this will be 0.875. This is going to be 0.9. 925, 950, 975, and then the last one will be 1. So now we can see that we have this sort of like, clockwise staggered effect as they come in. And one extra detail that you might notice here is that they're also scaling in. So what I did here is I also added an appear effect to their parent, which is the image's wrapper. It's not adjusting the opacity to 0 because we are already handling the opacity on the individual images. We're only setting the scale to a little bit lower value here, maybe 0.9. And then the transition here will be a little bit slower, 2 seconds, 0 bounce, and the delay will be 0.75. So now you can see that this is what we have. The images come in and they are also scaled at the same time. Cool, so now the next element that we have to animate in is the navigation. By the way, I see a little issue here. The magnetic effect on these elements are cutting off a little bit, so I'll have to set the visibility of the overflow of the content frame, or no, just the wrappers that we created here. So the wrapper of the button and the wrapper of the logo to overflow visible, and I think it's going to be all fixed. No, it's not completely fixed because the content is also overflow hidden, so set that to overflow visible as well, and now it's fixed. So now you can see that like overflow issues are quite common in Framer, so we have to pay a lot of attention to what is the overflow setting on all of our frames. So let's add the appear effect to the navigation as well. Effects, appear. It's gonna basically come in from one opacity, so we're not changing the opacity, but we are animating it in from the top like this. And the transition will be 1 second, 0 bounce, and 1.2 will be the delay. So this is going to be the last element that comes in. So now this is the full effect that we have on the website. And yeah, it's, I think, time to start optimizing this for different breakpoints. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to optimize the navigation for a different device, maybe for a mobile, because you can see that if I start changing this viewport, it's not really going to work on mobile. So I have to adjust it. So I'll just duplicate this with Command D just to have a archive version, because we're going to be able to copy the appear effect from this one. I'm going to just set it to visible now. And then I'm going to remove the appear effect from the navigation and turn it into a component with our shortcut. And then this will be the desktop variant. And we're going to start creating a couple of other variants for the mobile states. But we have to prepare our little component for these changes, because you can see that here, when I start resizing this, we start seeing this little hamburger menu. But where is it coming from? We don't really have a hamburger menu here. We haven't created it. So we have to hide it within the navigation right now, already on the desktop primary breakpoint. So I'm going to just create a little frame here. It's going to be a square, 36 pixels. And within that, we're going to have just 2 simple lines. So 1, and then we'll just duplicate it really quickly. Let's set the color to black, just duplicate it like this, place it to the center, and that's it. This will be called menu, and then I'm gonna place it here within the logo wrapper. And then I'm gonna also turn it into a component. So create component, because of course it is going to have its default state where it's like a hamburger menu, and it's going to also have a state where it is an X icon. So we'll have to adjust it here. I'm just going to press Option H and V on my keyboard to center this line and rotate it. I'm going to do the same on the other line, and now we have an X. Basically that's it, and the framer will smartly animate between these states when we switch between them. So now here on the desktop, I'm just going to set the visibility to no, and then I can start creating the first variant. Here I'm going to set the width to 390, so we have something that actually looks like a mobile phone. This will be called mobile open. And so let's start adjusting it so we have an open, version of this. So because we structured this component properly, we will be able to set it up really easily. We just have to set the content to vertical direction, then distribute will be start, and then this logo wrap will be set to width fill, the height will be 70 pixels, and then we're going to show the menu finally, visible, yes. Then the distribute within the logo wrapper will be space between, so the logo is on the start, the menu is on the very far right, and yeah, the mobile open variant itself will be set to distribute. Actually, we can keep it on distribute center, just switch the alignment to the top. Later this is going to be important. And then the height will be fit content, and the content frames height will also be fit content, so we can actually see these additional elements. So this here will be set to vertical direction. The gap will be adjusted so they don't have so much space between them. The gap here can be also adjusted, and then let's add some padding to the bottom of this navigation, 24. And I think that's it. Maybe here this is not centered, this button, so just center it within its frame, and that's it. Now we have the mobile open. We can create a new variant here, and we can just close it here. Then I'm just gonna have to rename it to mobile close. And here I'm gonna set these elements to opacity 0 because we're no longer gonna need them. We're going to also set pointer events to none, just to make sure that we are not clicking them accidentally, because even though they're opacity 0, they're still on the page and we might accidentally click them. If we set point towards none, that's not going to happen. So the height here will be set to fixed 70 pixels. And that's it. Now we have the close state of the navigation, and we can switch the menu as well to, actually it can stay hamburger and it needs to be switched here to the X. And now to make sure that we switch between these when we click this little button here, we can just connect an interaction from the X to the mobile close on a click and then connect it back from the hamburger menu. Basically that's it. Now we have a little navigation here, which is perfectly optimized for phone. So we can just click this little breakpoint button here to create a tablet and the phone breakpoint, and we can adjust the navigation here on the phone to the mobile open variant. Why are we switching it to mobile open? I don't know. I think we should switch it to mobile close. That should be the starting state. However, you can see that as I switched it to mobile open, it wasn't changing its height. It's because the height is set to fixed 70, and so we have to set it on the primary to height fit content. So if a variant has higher, height or bigger height, it will actually adapt to that because it's set to fit height. Yeah, that's it. I don't know why. I think I'm a little bit confused here. No, I'm not confused. I have to set mobile close here. Yeah, this is the starting state. Okay, now it is pretty good. As you can see, if I start adjusting the viewport, eventually I'll see the navigation that is designed for mobile. Pretty good. Now I'll just have to adjust some things on other sections, such as the feature section here and the hero section mainly. So here I'll just make sure to lock the images wrapper so I can select this text layer here. I'll change this, it's gonna be a little bit hard because we have different sizes for these two fonts, but I'll switch this one to 48. This is going to be 48 as well. And then this right here will be something a little bit smaller. Yeah, probably 40. That looks great. And then I can set the line height to something a little bit smaller. Yeah, it feels okay. This right here, the subtitle is set to width fit, which is not great. We should set it to width fill. So I'm going to set it here on the primary to width fill, so it's applied on all other breakpoints. However, I have to set the alignment to the center if I make that change. Also set some padding inside of the hero on the right and on the left. So we have some space here, some breathing room around the edges. And yeah, that's it. And then what we're gonna have to also do is maybe just adjust the images wrapper so the images are a little bit more visible. But of course on mobile, we're not really gonna be able to hover. So the effect will not really be visible, but the images will still be there and we can maybe adjust them, place them to different positions if we want to make them a little bit smaller, if that's something we want to do. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of it. That's all we can do with these images. Maybe let me just reposition some of these so they're a little bit more visible. But yeah, I think that's it. That's all I can do with this on the phone breakpoint. Oh, and one thing that we forgot is to add the navigation effect. So that we created this navigation component, we can copy the effect that we had on the original frame of the navigation and just paste it onto the component right here. And now it will be animating in nicely. Last section, actually not the last section because we also have to set the footer wrap on phone breakpoint, but first let's take a look at this one. This will be just a simple direction change, and then I'm gonna probably set the top padding to 0. It looks pretty optimized. I think that's good. Let me see. Yeah, it's maybe here we have a little bit more space than what I would love to see, so maybe set this to fit content, and then set the padding of 44. Yeah, it looks better right now with this setup. Okay, so now the last adjustment will be on the footer. We'll just have to set the content to direction vertical and then distribute start, then alignment to the left and a little bit bigger of a gap. And basically that's it. Now we have created our website. We optimized it for different devices, for tablet and phone. It looks great on all devices. And now we can publish this. we were using the same elements like frames or text layers and auto layout or stacks, just like in Figma. But at the end now, here in Framer, we can publish it as a real working website with a single click. So if I go to the top right, click publish, as you can see, I have the little link here that I can click. You can see that I have my website right here. I can send it to my friends. They will be pretty much amazed. And yeah, this is it. This is how easy it is to create an interactive, cool little website in Framer. So yeah, that's it for this video. Make sure to check out framer.university for other cool resources, tutorials, or components, remixable stuff. I think it's a great resource if you're learning Framer and want to speed up your workflow or like learning process a little bit. That's it. Make sure to write a comment if you enjoyed this video, if you have any more questions. Like this video, subscribe for more. I want to see you in the next one.